concerned that we're taking the civility out of civilization. I've listened to the words at work. I've listened to the things people say on the news. And we're becoming a very fragmented, very cruel society. And so, and the tragedy of it is that much of it is coming from what we call our religious right. They're supporting things that should not be supported. They're encouraging the government and other people to treat other folk like they should not be treated. And then we wonder why folks don't want to become Christians. It's tragic. So those of us that are Christians are going to have to stand up and let the world know that's not who we are. We don't hate folk. But it's a blessing in it because, let's be honest, our president has fulfilled what the folk wanted him to fulfill, and it's revealed a lot about this country that we were in denial about. All right. And so really we're in a state worse than the 50s and 60s as far as I'm concerned, because I grew up during the 50s and 60s. And so while it's still a great country to live in, we still, as Christians, need to recapture what Christianity is, and let the world know what you're hearing from the religious right is not right. All right. That's not what Christianity is about. The Jesus of America is not the Jesus of the Bible. All right. And so let's be praying about that. Let's be, and now that I'm in and settled, we will be having a church meeting. I'll have to get Sister Payne and look at my calendar and get with you all. We need to sit down because we're getting lax in our attendance. We're getting lax in a lot of things. And that should not be dependent on whether I'm here or not. Amen. That should be dependent on you being a child of God. My schedule doesn't allow me to be here a lot now, so, and I understand that. But the thing is, that whether I'm here or not should not affect whether you're here. Because I'm in church somewhere if I'm not here. Amen. We love it. Another year of grace. We want to talk about another year of grace. Amen. Then he told this parable. A man had a fig tree growing in his vineyard, and he went to look for fruit on it, but did not find it. So he said to the man who took care of the vineyard, "For 3 years now I've been coming to look for fruit on this fig tree and haven't found any. Cut it down. Why should it use up the soil?" "Sir," the man replied, "leave it alone for 1 more year, and I'll dig around it and fertilize it. And if it bears fruit next year, fine. If not, then cut it down." This story is all about grace. It's about the grace that God extends to us even when we are not at our best. And what I loved about this cartoon was, you can't read it, but it says, the tree's looking at the man saying, could you get fruits from a tree without cutting me down? All right. If a tree has fruit on it, you can pick the fruit without cutting the tree down. But the problem here is, if you look at the tree is hiding its fruit. All right. How many of us are going through life hiding our fruit? All right. But yet God has given us another chance. So the question becomes, what kind of year have you been as 2019 for you? If you placed it on a scale of 1 to 10, what kind of year has this been for you? Maybe you give it an 8 or 9 or 10. In other words, it was a really good year. Maybe it was a good year because you had success in your business, on your job. Everything went well. A good year at school and at work. You got good grades. This was the 1 year that you had good family relationships and you formed new friendships. It was a good year. It was an 8 to a 10. Perhaps 2019 was a year that included a lot of exciting things, new challenges, tasks completed, a great holiday season, a fantastic vacation, a new grandchild was born, a lot of good stuff happened. On the other hand, you may be rating it an 8 and above simply because comparing it to 2018, it's a whole lot better than 2018 was. Ultimately, you could give it a 2019 a 5. You could say, well, it was just another year, pretty much the same. Nothing really changed. Nothing very exciting. In fact, it was kind of dull and dreary. Just getting up, going to work, coming home, going to bed, and doing the same thing the next day and the next day and the next day. And then maybe 2019 for some of us is a 2. Everything that could go wrong did go wrong. The year included tragedy, sickness, loss of friends, marriage problems. The kids were impossible. I had a death in the family. How would you rate this year? Think back and check what kind of person you were in 2019.
All right.
Are there any regrets? Think back and check about what you were. If you were able to start 2019 over, how would you behave differently? Would you have shown more understanding, cared more, been more patient, been less critical of other folk, been more supportive and helpful? As I reflect on the year that has passed, certainly there are things that I wish I could have done a little different. How about your relationship with God?
Amen.
Did that flourish and grow during the year of 2019? Or did it just hover in much the same place as it did the previous year? Are you more spiritually inclined toward God at the end of this year than you were at the beginning of the year? Or did you go backwards? Perhaps it went backwards. You found yourself praying a little less. You heard less from God through His Word. And you worshiped less. Now, when I say worship less, I'm not just talking about coming to, because some of us come to Bible class and come to worship, but we really don't worship.
Amen.
How could you ask the question, how did my life reflect the fact that I am God's child? Did I speak as God's child? Did I act with the love of God in my heart? Did I interact with others with the same love and forgiveness that God has shown me? As we stand at the threshold of another year, Jesus tells us a parable. It is quite brief, but the point is quite clear. What have I done with the year that God has given me? Look at the text. He says, then he told this parable. A man had a fig tree growing in his vineyard, and he went to look for fruit on it, but did not find any. Now, that may be confusing, but in those days, they may have a grapevine orchard, but there would be fig trees planted among the orchard, among the grapevine. So he comes out and he's looking. Has anybody had their mouth set for something? You knew that it ought to be in the refrigerator.
All right.
And you got your mouth set for it. I'm going to enjoy this. I'm going to get me something. And you go in there.
Don't you see?
And it's not there.
Right.
Isn't that disappointing?
Yes, it is.
I know it ought to be here. But it's not here. Look at what he says. So he said to the man who took care of the vineyard, for 3 years now, I've been coming to look for fruit on this fig tree and haven't found it. 3 years. He's been coming looking for something and finding nothing. 3 years. So he says, cut it down. Why should it take up the soil? So the question becomes, am I bearing fruit? If Jesus came to look for me, could he see anything in regards to fruit in me? Jesus got it right. Why should that tree remain standing? Why should it keep taking up space, using up the goodness of the soil if it is only serving no purpose? What is the point of having a tree that should bear fruit but bears nothing? How many of you that garden? How many of you that garden fruit came. The bush was pretty, but there were no roses. Aren't you disappointed when you plant something and it's supposed to do something, but it does nothing? That's disappointing. When you go to something and look for something, we've got a Bradford pear tree in our front yard. But the thing is, it's a hypocrite. And I'm gonna tell you why it's a hypocrite. But we bought it. We paid for it to be a hypocrite.
Okay.
We bought a fruitless
Oh, man.
pear tree. Why? Because we liked the flowers, but we didn't want the mess that the fruit makes. That's the way a lot of us are. We like the show, we like to bloom our flowers, but we don't want to put off any fruit because you have to deal with some mess
Well,
if you put off fruit. The birds are going to come in, the fruit's going to fall, you're going to have flies. Don't you know when you start bearing fruit for God, you have to deal with a whole lot of stuff
all right now. All right.
that you really don't want to deal with? So a lot of us just want to be like that Bradford pear tree. We want to bloom with flowers.
All right. I hear you.
And everybody's sitting around waiting, but we're going to have some good people, some good pears this year. There are probably people that drive through our neighborhood because it's right in the front yard, right? It's not far in the yard. For a few years, folks were, when no parents get right, I'm going to get you one. Jesus, and to paraphrase Jesus, Jesus said, cut it down. Cut it down right now and stick a match to it. That cuts deeply. If it were not for the grace of God,
Well,
he could say the same thing about each and every one of us because none of us bore the fruit that we should have. So don't look at your neighbor
well,
and say what's wrong with them. All of us could have done a little better and should have done a little better than we did last year. But when we talk about the story, the owner has a right to be disappointed and angry at that useless tree. It's no wonder he wanted to destroy it. However, as we listen to the story, we know Jesus is not just talking about a fig tree, he's talking about us.
All right.
So we're led to ask ourselves the question, am I bearing fruit? I keep sucking up God's air, sleeping in God's bed, in God's house, on God's job, driving God's car, eating God's food, spending God's money. But what has he gotten from me for all that? God can easily ask the question, what have you done for me lately?
all right.
And it's always about me. The more I get, the more I want.
All right.
That's some folks' philosophy. The more I get, the more I want. We get all we can and can all we get. You can look at a person, mouth is white from hunger and thirst. I'm going to pray for you. Got $100 bill in your pocket, where you go buy them a Coke and a honey bun. But you call yourself a Christian. I'm not talking about us, I'm talking about that. I'm not talking about y'all. But the text continues by saying, leave it alone. One more year. That's where we got the subject. Another year of grace. God blessed you through 2019. You had a year of grace. If the Lord blesses us to see another Sunday, we'll start another year, and God's going to give us more grace even in that year. But what are we going to do with it?
Amen.
And the interesting thing about this is, he says, I'll dig around it, I'll fertilize it. If it bears fruit next year, fine. If not, then cut it down. With that, Jesus ends his story of the fig tree, leaving his listeners to ponder the generosity, the patience, and the grace of the gardener. They are struck with the words of the gardener when he says, leave it alone. The words he used here literally could be interpreted, forgive it. It didn't do anything but forgive it. How many of us know that God has had to forgive us for a whole lot of things?
Yes, sir.
The wages of sin is death. But God, through his Holy Spirit and his Son, Jesus Christ, says, leave it alone. Let me work with it. When you put Jesus came and died on the cross that we might have a right to the tree of life. When you make that kind of sacrifice, you don't give up on what you love that easily.
All right.
How many of us have had children that the world has given up on, but we have not?
Amen.
And I'm not just talking about being in trouble in jail. Some of us had children that were sick, and the world gave up on them, but we didn't.
All right now. All right.
When you love something and you love somebody, it's just not that easy to give up on it and walk away from it.
Amen.
You find yourself doing things you said you wouldn't do.
Amen. Yes.
Going places you said you wouldn't.
That's all right. All right now.
Because that's the way grace and love work. We weren't looking for God. God was looking.
Amen.
We gave nothing to God. God gave everything.
All right now.
They know now that Jesus wasn't simply telling a story about a fig tree. But he was talking about God and the way he forgives us even though we don't deserve such generosity and such kindness. That's as far as I'm going to get today. Because we're going to finish it up there. We're going to tell you what kind of fruit God is looking for. You know, sometimes we tell folk what God is looking for fruit from you, but we never tell them what kind of fruit that he's looking for. I was reading my newspaper the other day, and to show you how sad Christianity has become, a lady won a lottery, $114 million. A preacher sued her because the church didn't. Now, are we trying to save souls, or are we trying to get rich?
Get rich.
Isn't that tragic?
Yeah.
If she didn't want to, but that's what preachers have gotten into. We want money.
All right.
We want fame. We want everything we can get and tell folks, well, you know, the Lord's going to bless you if you bless me. Well, doesn't that formula work both ways? Preacher, Lord, if you bless me, the Lord's going to bless you. That's the statement. Another year of grace. We've got to learn to be more forgiving. And I'm not saying, see, some folk call a while back, Brother Dude is passed now, but in the heyday, you know, we were doing well, like things were growing. And somebody told Brother Dude, said, the reason everybody runs over to Franklin Street is because your preacher is a cream puff. He don't stand for nothing. And I told him, I said, well, you know what? Just tell them I know how to stand on principle without walking on people. Because when people are hurting, that's the last thing they need is for you to beat on them. As a matter of fact, when the two men went to pray, one man stood up and said, Lord, I thank God I'm not like other people. I give up my time. As a matter of fact, I'm glad I'm not like this sinner that's standing beside me. He was arrogant. He was looking up to heaven, but the sinner wouldn't even look up to heaven. He put his head down. And here's the point we miss. He beat his chest and said, Lord, have mercy on me because I'm a sinner. When folks know they're falling short, they're already beating themselves up. You don't have to beat them up. You need to love them. God loves you. He gives you another year of grace. He gives us all another year of grace. And as soon as we get on our feet, we want to choke somebody else. But if God gives me grace, then I need more. But that also means I don't condemn you. You remember the woman at the well? Or the woman caught in adultery? Jesus asked, where are your accusers? In other words, Jesus said, and she said, I have none. Jesus said, well, neither do I. Now, the first thing you notice is Jesus didn't condemn her. But he went on and said, and sin, go your way, and sin no more. He didn't condone it, but he didn't condemn it. We've got to learn how to deal with How do you want folks to deal with your problem?
All right.
How do you want folks to deal with your problem? A lot of times the church cannot grow
Right.
because we're so hypercritical
Right.
and hypocritical.
Well, all right.
The reason I start dressing like I do is because young men don't wear suits anymore.
All right.
So I don't want them coming in saying, well, I can't come to church because I don't have a suit.
Right.
But some of us would have the audacity
Yeah.
when they come in looking like they're looking, instead of saying, thank God they're here, they just
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
where's the fruit?
Well,
The fruit says, I'm just glad to see them here.
don't you see?
Somebody come in, they got a little beer on their breath, they ought not come to the Lord's house. You ought to say, thank God they came here because they could have been on their way to the Lord.
All right.
We've got to learn to accept folk where they are
Yeah.
and take them to where they
Need to be. All right now.
So as I extend the invitation, we're going to start there.
Yes.
Somebody comes in,
Yes.
Francis is not working there anymore, but if somebody comes in, they wearing something you don't like. I don't want you to take them to Walmart. You go to Macy's, you go to Dillard's, because if it's that important, you ought to be willing to put something on it.
All right now.
If you're not willing to put something on it,
Zip.
we don't have any. But I'm just saying, a lot of times, folk can't bear fruit
Yes.
because the trees that are around them that are supposed to be trees end up being weeds,
Yes. Well,
choking things out.
yes.
But just remember, God has extended to you, and He's extended to me another year of grace.
All right now.
What are we going to do with it?
Yes.
What you going to do with it? Are you going to be forgiving like God is? Are you going to try to hold everything over everybody's head that you see? They can live better than that. Well, you can too. Times you weren't at your best. We are all in a hospital trying to get through. And I'm not, and like I say, I'm not saying you need to go sin and be willy-nilly, but I tell you all the time, it's not so bad if you fool me. But if I fool me, I am a fool indeed. Old folk, you say the pot can't talk about it. So let's learn. Let's extend to other folk the grace that God has extended to them, and give folk a chance to get it right. And notice what the farmer says. He says, I will work with it. I'll dig around it. I'll fertilize it. If folk are not producing, are you doing any digging? Are you doing any fertilizing? Are you doing anything to help them produce? And then fruit trees need another fruit tree
All right.
to produce fruit.
All right.
Because they cross-pollinate each other. Maybe they're not producing any fruit because you don't have any pop. Elder, I got to go. Give us an invitation. I got to go. Love you, but we're going to do better.
Yes, sir. All right. That's all right.
As the gospel has been preached, we should have been reached. We love God the way that we say we do, then they always tell me you ought to show some sign. God loves us and He has proved it by giving His Son. He died on the cross that we might live. It's your choice, whether you do or whether you don't. You heard the gospel portion of it, and that was enough of it to call you into God's place. You heard it, and you need to repent of your sin if you want to become a child of God. Go down to the water of the grave of baptism and become His child, nothing more and nothing less. None of us can talk about it. None of us. Because we're all working, trying to work out our own salvation while helping others to work out their salvation. God loves us. baptism and become his child. And he will love you just as much as he loved Moses, David, and all the others. He will love you just as much. So if you're here while we sing,